New national polling shows Donald Trump leading his closest opponent, Nikki Haley, by 49 points. And Trump's 91 felony charges appear to be having little to no negative impact on his base of support. New reporting from the Washington Post describes Donald Trump's turnaround this way. He's turned his criminal indictments into a rallying cry. His GOP opposition has so far failed to coalesce around a single effective message or challenger. And his political operation has been more professional and disciplined than in the past, with savvy moves such as changing contest rules, lining up supportive delegates, and pressuring Republicans to come to his defense. Joining us now is Isaac Arnsdorf, Washington Post national political reporter and co-author of that piece. He's also the author of the forthcoming book, Finish What We Started, the MAGA Movement's Ground War to End Democracy. Mr. Arnsdorf, thank you for being with us tonight. Thanks for your reporting. Those numbers are fascinating. The polling numbers for Donald Trump, we were showing some polling earlier in the show that mainstream Republicans are less likely to blame Donald Trump for January 6th and more likely to think that maybe Joe Biden didn't win the election. To what do you attribute all of this?
Well, there have been a few factors. One, you mentioned the failure of the opposition within the Republican Party to coalesce around a message against him. And it wasn't for lack of trying. Our reporting found that there were a lot of well-funded efforts throughout 2023 to find attacks on Trump that would work with Republican primary voters. And they basically came up empty because they were just hitting this wall of how much Republican primary voters still like Donald Trump and how much they resented attacks on him. A lot of those attacks actually backfired on the other candidates when they tried them. The other thing that happened was Ron DeSantis, who a lot of Republicans who wanted to move on from Trump were pinning their hopes on right after the midterms, he waited a really long time to get in. He waited until May. And part of that had to do with needing to change the law in Florida so that he could run as a sitting governor. But that gave Trump a huge head start. And he just pummeled DeSantis and started steadily bringing down his poll numbers throughout that whole time, with DeSantis basically without any kind of outfit around him to respond. And then the other thing we really have to mention is the prosecutions, the indictments, which are certainly causing Trump a lot of trouble now, and it could be a different story in the general election. But the effect in the primary was to rally Republicans around him and make a lot of Republican voters want to support him because of those prosecutions.
One of the things you reported on is Trump's team actually testing attacks against Trump in focus groups. I'm assuming that they were honest about it. They were in good faith. They were trying to figure out what attack would stick. And they largely found nothing.
Well, that's standard in a campaign. You have to try to figure out what your vulnerabilities are so you can figure out how to respond to them. So it was both the Trump campaign that was testing that and the other candidates and even major donors who weren't necessarily affiliated with a campaign but were sort of testing the waters. If they're going to write a huge check to attack Trump, a lot of these are investors who want to know they're going to get some return on that investment. And I spoke to one Republican operative who recalled observing one of these focus groups. And they tried explaining to the Republicans in the focus group that, Trump promised to build a wall. That was like his signature campaign promise in 2016. And there is no wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. And there was a woman in the group who said, well, actually, he must have meant to do that. He intentionally left gaps in the wall because that way it would herd the migrants into those gaps and make them easier to detain. And the operative told me, watching this and just thinking, how can you possibly argue with that kind of thinking?
Isaac, how much of this has to do with a polarized news environment where people just get different stories? Their realities about what Donald Trump is and the things he says are entirely different, including the fact that he sort of uses increasingly authoritarian and dictatorial rhetoric that would, generally speaking, turn people off in a democracy. It's not for his supporters.
Well, and he's been speaking, to right-wing media and to his supporters directly. He hasn't faced a mainstream interview in quite some time, several months. And so he's intentionally going around. And that changed, early on in the primary when he was trying to use an advantage of media coverage over Ron DeSantis. There was a lot more access, and that's changed as he has increased his lead. And you see the effect of that in the poll, the Washington Post poll that you referenced earlier. And the numbers of Republicans who believe that January 6th was an FBI sting operation or something like that, or that the election wasn't legitimate, those numbers have actually increased since 2021.